Welcome back to Movie Conversations. I'm Brian Ritchie. Joining me as always is Nora St. John. Good morning, Nora. How are you doing?
I'm doing quite well, Brian. It's a beautiful day here in sunny California. It's just starting to cool down a little bit. The leaves are looking like they might be changing. And I think both you and I are getting ready for some travel. So it's
Yeah,
looking at what is our winter going to look like? We'll see.
exactly. Well, this fall, I'm actually looking forward to. I'm going to be in China and Japan, and it's sort of like,
Nice.
oh, I've heard that it's a good time of year. Leaves will be changing, and it's supposed to be beautiful. So I'm
It's
super looking forward
beautiful.
to that. So it's kind of like, oh, this could be a really neat little adventure. Usually, I go with as you know, we get invited sort of at the worst times of year when it comes to tourism, just because that's when people have time off. So it's usually the dead of winter or the peak of summer.
Right.
And, the hot, so hot, you never want to leave the hotel or the conference, or so cold, you freeze. So it's kind of like, oh, this might be really pleasant. This could be
It should
nice.
be nice. It should be beautiful. Yeah, I'm going to the warm places. So I'm going to Singapore, Thailand,
Oh, that's right.
Taipei, and Guangzhou. So on the opposite side, I'm like, okay, fall is coming, but I've actually been trying to get, particularly Al's going to be traveling with me, my husband,
Oh, nice.
prepared with complete warm weather gear. Because otherwise, as you know from being in those parts of China where it's like that humid, you walk out and you are completely covered with sweat within minutes. And as Al says, I look like I just killed somebody every time I walk out the hotel door. So we're
Yeah.
kind of looking for, good clothing that can manage that situation a little better than cotton and jeans.
Well, last year I was in two different places in China, and it was a 40-degree swing between the
Oh my
locations
Lord. Yes.
because it was Xi'an and then down in Foshan, which is right next to Guangzhou, and it was a 35-degree, 40-degree. I was like, holy smoke! So you literally have to pack for two
For
completely
winter
different
and
climates.
summer. Right? And it's real winter and real summer. It's not like you're like doing a fall spring thing. It's like it's cold and it's hot and sticky.
Yeah. I kept telling everybody that it's like, okay, imagine going from Chicago to Miami. That's literally the distance. So you can see why I'm dressing for 70 degrees in one place, but 30 degrees in the other. So yeah, so this time around, I'm looking forward to it. It should be really good. So yeah, this will be a fun adventure. Before we get any
Excellent.
further and get onto our topic today, I want to remind everybody, please hit that like and subscribe button, comment, share, do all of those things. We really appreciate every single one of you for listening. It helps us to no end. And we'd love to hear from you. Hit us up at movingconvos@gmail.com. That's the best way. You can also DM us. We're very active on our social media, especially through Instagram. So Moving Convos is where we're mostly at. You can also get our personal ones in the comment section to the side of this, or in the, you know, in the comments when it comes to wherever you are, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. So that being said, let's get on to today's topic. You have a good one, so I'll let you introduce it.
Brian and I were recently teaching down in Southern California at Blue Moon Pilates, and we were working on the upper body. And I realized, even when we were putting together the workshop, that Pilates and personal training have different approaches to upper body training. And I was really kind of excited to have a conversation where Brian and I can talk through the two different approaches. Particularly in the Pilates environment, if I look at traditional repertoire, there's kind of not a lot. The upper body stuff is a little mixed. Like there's a little this and a little that, but there's not in my sense, a real coherence to it in a way, philosophically, like how do you progress and where do you go and what are the important moves and all that. So I really wanted to talk to Brian and get the personal trainer's perspective on how you develop an upper body training program. What are the key elements you're looking for? And then for myself, this is all personal, to be honest with you, look at how I can really incorporate that better or more effectively in the Pilates environment. So that's my goal for today. We'll see how this goes.
Well, the interesting thing is when you first said this to us, you said, you and I, the core, we've got this down. Both sides, Pilates, personal training, we've got this down pat. We've talked about it a million times. Lower body, we both have coming from a very three-dimensional background. We want to
Very
move in
similar.
all three dimensions. We want to be in all planes of motion. And that's really kind of how I view the upper body as well. I think I told you the
Hmm.
way that I learned how to train the upper body was through movement. It wasn't through do chest, do triceps, do, biceps. It was more through movement and sort of, okay,
Ah.
what motion do you want to occur? And then figure out, okay, as you're doing that, let's say I want horizontal abduction of my shoulders. So basically like a chest press would be. I'm basically bringing my arm inward from the side inward. So it could be like a flying motion or a pressing motion. Both do the exact same thing when it comes to the shoulder joint. And so it's sort of like, okay, now how do I want to load this? Now, do I want to load it from gravity? Do I want to do sort of a body weight? Or do I want to do this sort of more through bands or tubing or a dumbbell or however else it's done? So really that's kind of where I started and how I continue to think about the upper body.
So thinking of movement as opposed to, again, bis, triceps, flies, or whatever it is, right?
Yep.
Um, that's always where we come from with Pilates, because very little. There's a few like isolated joint motions in Pilates, but not primarily. That's not primarily what we do. We're usually doing multiple things at the same time. So when you think about the different movements, like how do you? Again, you can analyze movements, but do you have like categories in your head of things you want to cover, like certain movements or certain ways to do things?
Yeah, I think anterior and posterior primarily. So I think anterior shoulder girdle,
Okay,
posterior shoulder girdle. Uh, and how I almost everybody is lacking in posterior shoulder girdle strength, conditioning,
right.
endurance.
Yes. Yep.
So almost every single person I start with, unless they don't need it, but I'm talking about the 1%, I start with posterior shoulder girdle endurance because I want better posture for my clients. And almost everybody is coming to us with that forward head carriage, rounded shoulders, internally rotated humerus. So for me, it's sort of like, okay, we need to try and erase that or at least minimize it. So I try and figure out, okay, I want to do posterior shoulder girdle, but I really want to focus on endurance to start with. So I'll pick
Okay.
exercises where I can either have them do a pulse. So a good example is with a shoulder extension. So my arms are straight out in front of me if I'm in a standing position with a band. I'm holding a band which is anchored away from me. And I'm going to pull my arms down by my side, right by my pockets. What my focus is thinking about the shoulder blades. Are they squeezing back? Am I widening through the collarbones? And then I'll have them hold or maybe do 1-inch pulses because that's a
Hmm.
way for me to get that end range and remind the muscles, hey, this is where I want you to be. This is where I want you to be and how we want you to hold on. So that's if I wanted to do it with a band. I find bands are pretty easy. People can understand those. But I also love doing it with gravity, just having them on their stomach, forehead on a pillow or something, hands down by their side, same thing, opening through the collarbones and lift their arms slightly off the ground and hold that for 5 seconds. Oh my gosh. I've done this at countless workshops, and all these fitness instructors are dying after 5 repetitions of 10-second holds. They're
Uh-huh.
dying, but they could
Uh-huh.
do a row with 100 pounds, but they couldn't hold the position, which is why when you look at them, they are round shouldered. Those muscles have no endurance.
And so what you're looking for there, and this is the same strategy that I use too, is basically trying to get the postural muscles in place first.
Yep.
Right. I mean, again, you're using rhomboids and perhaps and other kinds of things, but basically
Mhm.
trying to get that idea of how do you hold yourself up.
Yep.
I love that. Yeah, and one of the things that I'm reminded of a client that I had who had pretty round shouldered and sort of slumped over, and it wasn't stiff kyphosis. It was just she just slumped. It was just
Yep.
she could move it up, and we all that's all we worked on with her. It was interesting. I remember working with her and giving her a program, and I didn't see her for a couple of weeks because I was out of town, and I came back and that's all she'd done. She just came in and did this one program like 3 times a week for the last 2 weeks, and her posture was completely different when she walked in the room. It was really remarkable. But again, it was about endurance. I love that. That's great. Yeah.
I had something happen even with myself that my back, I've got a little Sherman's kyphosis, which is, caused me to want to be in a kyphotic posture. Um, and in order to fight that, it's something that I've had to work on for my whole life. Well, I was seeing a doctor about it because I was having some mid back pain and I saw a doctor about it and we became somewhat friendly. I didn't see him for a while. I saw him probably a year and a half later. Of all places, in the park, I was there with my kids, and he stopped and he looked at me and said, "What have you been doing?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Your posture is improved dramatically." And this is what I'd been focusing on with myself, because we have a tendency to focus on things with clients so much more than ourselves. So I
Right.
basically took myself as a case study and was okay. What
I'm going to do
what
this.
if this person were in front of me? What would I have them do? And I really broke it down that way for myself. And I said, okay, I need to focus on my thoracic spine first, because
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't rotate and I couldn't extend. I still can't extend very well, but I can do better than I used to. So again, everybody starts where they are. They're going to get as good as they're going to get. You know, I say any progress is good progress. So again, focusing on that and getting that moving. Focus on the rhomboids, focus on the trapezius, on the lats, on my posterior, on the entire posterior shoulder girdle, even my rear deltoids, because I was very guilty of those mirror muscles when I was, in my 20s too. Lots of, anterior muscles, the things you can see in the mirror, shoulders, chest, bicep, all the stuff that you can see, the vanity muscles, you focus on. And I realize now that, okay, I need to do all the other things. And when I started doing that, it made a dramatic shift for me. My body moved better. I was able to do everything from hit a golf ball better to just taking care of my kids and whatnot. So this was, I don't know, 15 years ago or something. And it made a dramatic difference. And that's when I started saying, oh, okay, yeah, we need to focus on this for everybody. And I had been doing this for a lot of clients, but I didn't realize I didn't have a methodology. It was more like, okay, you assess the person in front of you, you deal with it. But then I
Right.
started really looking at it and saying, wow, like 90% of the people I'm seeing are starting with similar foundational exercises, posterior shoulder girdle endurance, thoracic rotation, a little bit of thoracic extension if it's, if that's what they need,
Available. Yeah.
and even cervical extension, or retraction, just to see if I could get them back just a little bit and then hold it. All of these were
Yeah.
involving endurance. Once they have that and they can hold the posture, then I can weight it and I can have them go through different ranges of motion, because I take them into a W, I take them into a T, I do all of those things for endurance. Then once I weight it, I know that they know where their body feels,
Yeah.
proprioceptively. Okay, they can feel that space.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where I try and start from, is creating that foundation of endurance. Then we can build on with strength.
I love that, because the other thing too that occurs to me is I can't tell you how many clients, I'm sure you've had this experience too, which is what clued me into getting the back body going also, was I had clients who I was teaching just how to sit at their desk, right? Because they're having back pain, right, for example, or shoulder pain or neck pain. And I would put them, usually I would just have them sit at my desk for a bit with the computer in front of them and kind of just have them chat with them enough so they relax into their usual position. And they're
Yep.
usually slumped and in a funky position. I say, okay, so try to hold yourself up in a better posture, hold your back away from the chair and just sit up straight while you're doing that. And like 5 minutes and their back was burning, like burning.
Fine.
Right. So that was also that clue, like, oh wow, you can't sit up, right? You don't have
Yep.
enough back support, particularly upper back support, to actually maintain that. So you don't want to load that because it's not strong enough yet.
Well, how many times have you done this? Had a client go into a quadruped position on their hands and knees, and you put them in a
Mhm.
neutral spine with their head, their shoulders, their thoracic, their lumbar, and just watch them for, I don't know, 10 seconds. And what happens? The head starts
They
going
wilt.
down.
They
They wilt. Their
wilt.
head goes down, their shoulders start rounding, they start arching their
Yep.
back. It's sort of, wow, everything gets lost. And
Yeah.
again, they can find it, possibly, at least with our help, they can find it, but then maintaining it. And so that's one of those things that's, okay, I need you to stay here. Just hold, just hold, just hold, and then relax, just hold and work. I start people at 5 seconds for 5 reps, then build all the way up to 10 reps. When they can do 10 reps, I flip it. 10-second holds, 5 reps, and then build up to
Mhm.
10-second hold, 10 reps. If they're doing 10-second hold, 10 rests, and in between reps literally is just come down, then right back up. It's just to give the muscle a little bit of a break, to get a little bit of oxygen, to get a little bit of a very brief moment of
Short
relaxation,
rest. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
then go right back into it. I like that because they also have to find it again.
Yes. They have to find it, right?
They
Not
have
you
to find
telling
it.
them. They have to go, where was that? Oh yeah. Yeah. Perfect.
Precisely. So again, finding that, and then when I want to load it, if I'm having them do something like a row
Uh-huh.
or a reverse fly, on their stomach over a bench, flying out into a T, I know that they can do it because their muscles have already learned, this is my position, this is where I need to be, and then I get them through that range of motion. And then I can focus on more mobility of the scapula. I can focus on where it wants to move because I've already taught it where it should be at rest. Because right now, most people's scapulas are not where they should be at rest for optimum performance or
No.
optimum
Mm-mm.
posture. They're all
Yeah.
funky. I mean, I just had a Pilates instructor in here earlier today, and one shoulder was definitely higher than the other. And I looked at them thinking, wow, but they can't see themselves. And
Right.
she's an instructor. She works on these things. And once I put her in position, oh, wow. You can see that she sort of corrected and said, oh, I had no idea. Okay.
Yeah.
You get it.
Yeah.
Then hold. A good example of this is if I want to do something like a tricep extension, something that most people don't even think about, and I'll do a cable machine or something. Elbows, to my side, and I'm just extending my arm straight down to my side. But doing that, where are my shoulders? Where are my scapula? They should not be moving much. They should
Right.
be at neutral. They should just be
Yep.
chilling out. Now, the
Yep.
muscles around the area should be holding them roughly in place. They shouldn't be
Yep.
fixated, but they should be keeping them at neutral. But how many people, as they extend their arms, their shoulder rolls forward or
Uh-huh.
elevates
Uh-huh.
up, or they internally rotate their upper arm? So just by reminding them, and I'll put my fingers on their scapula very lightly and hold their shoulder very lightly, just as a reminder, and sometimes just tap very lightly and hold them in that position. I kid you not. The other way they can do 10 reps, no problem. This on rep 2, it's burning and not their back, their triceps. They say, oh my gosh, how come I can't do this way? It's like, let's take the way down. It's getting their whole body in the right position, not just doing the move.
So a couple ways, like I'm just thinking what you're saying, and there's a bunch of exercises which I use for the same purposes in the Pilates environment, and one of them is just chest press,
Mhm.
which again, that's a classic. It's basically shoulder extension, where you're bringing the arms back. You've got the springs from or the resistance from in front, and one of the things that happens there too is that roll forward, right? The
Yep.
shoulders roll forward, especially if they go too far back. So that's always one of those cases of, okay, so adding a different piece to that, can you bring the arms back, keep the chest open, not roll those shoulders forward, which is usually some scapular retraction along with that,
Yep.
right? I mean, you can come a little ways if you keep the scapula where they are, but you can come a lot farther if you let the scapula retract and then hold that. So same thing. It's a great place to do a little isometric hold or little pulses back there, keeping the chest
Mhm.
open, keeping that work happening.
And I love
Uh,
using the
yeah.
reformer for that exercise because the springs are different than bands. And I'm going to say,
Yes.
because bands, they have a tendency to be almost too light when their arms are extended. But then when you're taking
Yes.
it down by the side and pulling back, it's a little more uncomfortable. Whereas I can get them in a little bit different position on the reformer. And
Hmm.
because the springs have a different, you know, basically strength arc, as
Yes.
the resistance goes up, I can modify that very easily on the reformer. That gives me greater. Oftentimes I prefer the bands because they have greater range of motion and things. In this instance, I love the springs on the reformer just because I can keep that range of motion a little tighter and get a good
Right.
dynamic strength.
And good range in terms of resistance through a smaller arm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
The other thing too, and you mentioned this in terms of doing W's and things prone. Um, the couple places that I love this are pulling straps on the long box,
Mhm.
and also the chair work for like basically triceps press and scapular mobility and swan, that kind of thing. So anything where basically the upper body is cantilevered, right, the hips are balanced on something like the chair or whatever, but the upper body is off something, kind of has to
Yep.
support the whole back body. That's the other place that I work a lot on that endurance, because they've got to hold that position while they're doing whatever they're doing, whether it's a chest press or a scapular work or whatever they're doing. So it gives them that chance to, again, work endurance through that whole back line
Mhm.
while they're doing something else. It's another place to play with that. I love that.
Yeah. So after we built the endurance and I get them to feel where they need to be in space, that's when I will look and say, okay, what do they need? Because everybody has muscular imbalances. We're usually
Yeah.
very we're a lot stronger in our front than our back in general. Most people are male, female. That's just the way we are. We have a tendency to be better
Yeah.
pushers than pullers. So
Yeah.
I will almost always do more in structuring a workout. I will start with the back body. I will start with posterior shoulder girdle. So we will do rows are probably my favorite exercise, and you can do them a multitude of ways. Everything
Yeah.
from dumbbells to kettlebells to tubing to bands to cables. And I use them all because I love variety, and I do believe that hitting the body in various ways is going to give it the greatest benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my favorites is leaning over an inclined bench, 2 dumbbells in your hand, and just pull into a row. And a lot of people say, well, that's the same as doing a seated row with cables. It's not. Working with dumbbells against gravity feels different. Moving that weight through space is different than a fixed path of motion is with a cable. But I will do that one over the bench. And then maybe I will have them do a higher row using a wider bar or something on a cable. I will hit various angles because I want the muscles to get hit at various angles. Again, I want to train it in 3 dimensions. I want the elbows pinched to my side, arms out. I want the whole thing to be moving.
Nice. Nice. So we've got like a lot of work for the back body. And then
Mm-hmm.
once you feel like that's sufficient,
Mm-hmm.
where do you tend to go next? What's your kind of, again, back body's key and fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
Then where do you go after that?
Then I usually do anterior. Uh, and with anterior, I start with stability of the scapula in the anterior plane. I find that
Yep.
most people are very weak in their serratus anterior in general, pec minor as well, so they don't have great scapular stability. So a lot of times, and that silly machine that we used to use that called the pec deck, and they say, oh, it's great for your pec minor. Oh, that's all BS. Sorry, that's just personal pet peeve of mine. But I love to give people just a single arm band or tube press, standing position
Mm,
so their core is
mm,
engaged. Let them press forward. And what the reason I like this one is as they're pressing, I'll have them do a little bit of rotation at the beginning and end. So their scapula is actually moving the way it's supposed to, and I can help guide that. So that serratus anterior is actually getting some work, but at the same time, it's having to stabilize that band or that tube again in the standing position. So their arm might be wobbly, much like if they used a dumbbell, and it just gives them a nice range of motion. I find it's easier to do it there than putting a dumbbell in their hands, just because when you're lying on your back, first of all, lying on your back, you're really not supporting and stabilizing the rest of your body because the bench
mm-hmm.
is,
Yep.
or the
Yep.
ball is, or whatever you're laying on.
Yep.
And when you're pressing up, a lot of people, they'll do the dumbbells, but it's very awkward for a lot of people and they don't know the path of motion. They don't know what to do. And it can take the learning curve for that can take some time. Whereas if I just say, okay, I want you to take your left foot forward, your right leg behind you a little bit, in your right hand, I'm going to have you push like you're doing a punch. Just push forward and come back. And then I'll get them in better, motion and say, okay, now I want a little bit more rotation. Allow your arm to push a little bit farther. Good. Your shoulders are turning a little bit. Sometimes I'll have them use their chest as sort of like headlights sort of thing. I want you to turn, and have it arc across the room a little bit so that, you're going, instead of just staying straight ahead, there's a little bit of that rotation because that's going to help thoracic rotation. Their shoulders are going to turn naturally. And we're also going to get that natural slide and glide of the scapula. So that's usually my next step would be, okay, anterior shoulder girdle, a pressing motion, often with a band or tube to start with.
So a couple things when I'm thinking about that. One is, and this is just a question that I have. So,
Mhm.
in watching a lot of people do Pilates and basically do essentially a chest press of some variety, seated. There's serve a tray. There's a few different versions, but
Mhm.
basically, seated, pushing the arms forward. One of the things that I've noticed a lot is that there on many people, particularly women, because that's mostly who I work with. But as soon as that arm comes forward, the scapula will protract around and often will
Yep.
come up a little bit as well. And
Yep.
so what I've been and it's one of those things I go back and forth with because for a lot of things, like let's say I'm doing a throw, I want to time the thoracic rotation and the
Mhm.
scapular basically protraction to add the force forward. But I also want
Mhm.
them to understand what scapular stability is.
Yes.
Right. So a lot of times with that, that's a situation because it's a very simple exercise, right? You're doing it with one arm, Pilates typically do with two,
Mhm.
but basically pushing forward. Like, can you do that and not let that scapula let go? Can you keep that
Yep.
scapula back? That I find is a really interesting challenge for a lot of people.
It is.
And it just
It
doesn't,
is.
and it's more of an awareness exercise. Like I don't necessarily want you to always be keeping that scapula stable when you're pushing something. Sometimes you do want to add the scapula moving as well. But it's
Mhm.
just one of those things I play with. Like, okay, well, let's see if you can recognize
Mhm.
where those scapula need to be and keep them there, or then you have the choice of moving them if you need to.
This is where that exercise
Mm.
becomes an exercise because for
Yeah.
a lot of people, when I'm having them start out that first time, it's a fairly light resistance, medium tube. Usually I like the tube because it has a handle. But
Yeah.
my first thing is we've already done posterior shoulder girdle endurance. So they should fairly know where that scapula is in space a little bit, at least have it a
Hmm.
little awareness. So now as
Yeah.
they press, do they lose it? If they do,
Right.
then it's like, okay, I got to focus on that a little bit more. And I might
Yep.
have them say, okay, I want your scapula to stay here. Let your arm glide without moving that for 5 or 6 reps.
Right.
Good. Now, can you hold that and continue the motion on your own? I might put my hand flat against there and just see if it moves and see if they do lose that. So again, you're assessing constantly. And for a lot of people, they can't control that. And if I find they can't, that's when I start going all the way back to the beginning. It's okay. We need to work a lot more on some scapular stability in the
Yep.
quadruped position,
Yep.
in plank, all of that. Planking is one of those things that not everybody assumes they can do it and hardly anybody does it properly. Unfortunately, that's kind of what I see. And you lose the scapula. That's one of the things that happens first. So
Yep.
hopefully by this point, I've worked on them with that, at least against the wall. So maybe doing a wall push-up so that they can feel their scapula stay roughly in place. I don't mind a little bit of movement because that's natural. I don't I never want them to feel like it's fixated, like it's staying in place, like they're squeezing it back the whole time. I want them
Right.
to feel like it can move, but I want them to know where it's supposed to be in general. So,
I yeah,
yeah.
I also want to just add to that. So when I think about a push-up, like if you go into a push-up, and again, I watched a million people who do good push-ups just to try to figure this out. Ideally, the scapula will retract at some point.
Absolutely.
If they don't, you're going to get a lot of stress in a lot of places. But the key there is, do they come right back to the starting position when they're done? Because I find that timing is all over the map. Some people have a lot of scapular mobility early. Some
Yep.
people, the scapula don't move till much later in the motion. And all of them can be perfectly functional push-ups. But some
Mhm.
of them really require but some of them don't come back to the starting position. And they
Yep.
really just let the chest continue to sink, the scapula to wing, and they don't actually come back to that starting place of scapular stability. So that's what I really work on a lot with push-ups. Is not that you're not letting the scapula come together, but when are they coming together, and can you
Yeah.
control how they return? Yeah. So
It
or else do they drop
yeah.
into it, right?
To me, it's about control. That's the word that
Yes.
I use with them
Yes.
because
Yeah.
so often, as soon as they bend their elbows, and I hate to say this,
Yeah.
but for a lot of women, they've never been taught how to do a proper push-up. So as soon
Absolutely.
as they bend their
Absolutely.
elbows, they collapse through the scapula. They can't control
Yep.
it.
Yep.
So for some people, it may just be, I want you to just bend your elbows 5 degrees, but keep your shoulder blades in place. That may be a hard enough
Yes,
workout for them. And they're frying,
exactly.
they're shaking after 5 seconds. That may be where we start. I don't know. But it
Yeah,
is timing, and it's true. Can they control it? Because you're right. Some people can come down and their scapula retract fairly early in the motion. But when they
right.
come back, you see the same thing. Late in the motion, the scapula go right back to where they were, but it was under control.
Exactly.
Other, you know, and that's what I'm looking for. Is it under control, whether it moves early or late? Is it under control, and can they return to the starting position, that neutral position of their scapula? Yes or no. If they can't, then that's what we need to work on first. And even just having them, like you said, leaning up against the wall, holding that position, that
Hmm.
can work. I love
Or then you start to take them into an incline, right? Then they're on
exactly,
the trap table, then they're on the reformer foot
exactly,
bar, or they're in a box, right? Slowly getting that balance going. Yeah.
absolutely. And the reformer foot bar is probably my favorite to teach people to do push-ups on,
It is a
because
great surface.
I can
I use it
adjust
all the
that the
time.
whole place. You can
Exactly.
start straight up, and their body weight is maybe 40% of their body weight at the most,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
can
And then they're
take it
like,
lower. Exactly. It's a great way to initiate the movement. And
yeah,
you'll find, can they do it? Where do they lose control? Oh, that's too
yeah,
low. Take it up 2 notches. Oh, here's where we
exactly.
need to start.
Yep.
So when it comes to doing anterior shoulder girdle, I like movements like that. Now, that being said, I also will do, when I say three-dimensional, again, I'm looking at shoulder horizontal abduction and adduction.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about that arm moving toward and away from that midline. So I can do it with my arm at 90 degrees, at 40 degrees, at 45 degrees, down here by my side. I can do it anywhere along that arc. And
Hmm.
I will train the entire arc. So I may have them, and this is one of my favorite things, is I like to do sort of a flying exercise, either with bands or with a cable machine. I will have them do standing chest flies. So they're standing
Hmm.
forward. They have their arms are each have something in them, either a band, a tube, or cable, and they're pulling to the front of the body. Arms are slightly bent, and they open up their chest and then come back together. So they're doing a flying motion. Well, I will hit different angles, as many as I can. So I may start
Yeah.
the cable a little higher for my first set. Second set, drop that thing by 20 degrees. Do it again. Drop that thing by 20 degrees. Do it again. And then at the end, literally, they're doing almost a front raise type of exercise, because their arms are almost straight down by their side. They're slightly out, but they're coming across the body. They're getting a lot more upper chest. They're getting a lot more anterior deltoid. So if you think about muscle, it's focusing on that. But for me, it's focusing on that entire range of motion, so they have strength no matter where they ask their arm to move in space.
Right. Right. Yeah. Three-dimensional, right?
Yes.
And for me, the main place that I would work on that in the Pilates environment is actually either in standing on the trap table, right? So the standing arm work off
Mhm.
the end of the Cadillac or the tower,
Yep.
which is really just like doing it with bands against something, only you've got spring resistance instead.
Yep.
That's an environment that I play with a lot, and will play with all those angles, because again, you can put the springs high, you can put the springs low, you can have the arms down, you can have the arms up, right? You've got every
Yep.
possible variation there. And I would encourage those Pilates teachers in the audience to get creative with all of that standing arm work at the tower, because the traditional repertoire, I think, is quite limited. And I think there's a
Mhm.
lot of really great functional stuff you can do there to get that three-dimensional front and back body strength.
What I love about the reformer, I love the unilateral stuff to do. I will have them either kneeling on the reformer facing sideways, if I want to do that
Mhm.
flying
Yeah, me
motion,
too. I love that.
or
Yep.
sitting on the box, one of the two, doesn't matter to me, whatever they can do. But I love the kneeling because they have a lot more instability there. But then I
Yeah.
can give them a target with my hand. So the first one
Yeah.
may be straight in front of their chest. Well, the second one I can have in front of their nose. Third one can
Right.
be down in front of their belly button, or down in
Right.
front of their thigh, and just change that up. And each time, again, I may change my hand position with each repetition, or I may say, first set, is going to be all at this height, second set at this height, third set at this height. And you're getting a ton of core work. Again, that's sort of that indirect core, because you're not saying this is a core exercise, but heck, it is working a ton.
Yeah.
But they're also getting all of that range of motion in the anterior shoulder girdle, which is nice.
Really nice. Really nice. And that's, again, that's where, get creative out there, people. I'm just saying, because life, especially in the upper body, does not come at us in very predictable ways. Like you think about the
Yep.
lower body, we walk, we move sagittally, we flex and extend our hip and our knee and our ankle. Like that's what we do a lot of. And that's very repetitive, and it's very relatively straightforward. If you're a runner, if you're a cyclist, those are repetitive motions. The upper body is doing all kinds of every range, every angle, resistance in multiple places all the time. I mean, I even just think about my clients who have dogs. Like one of my clients, like 4 dogs. So she walks 4 relatively large dogs every day. That's a challenge on her, and she's right arm, and she really has a hard time holding them all with her left arm, right? And it's just like that pull, right? She's getting that pull. So how do you control the shoulder blade, control the arm, not get stressed in the front, maintain a little bit of tension, right, through that bicep, because you've got to keep some control there. You're not just letting the arm get pulled. And that's just one thing, right? That's not lifting something into the overhead bin or brushing your hair or lifting your 2-year-old up and putting him in the car seat, right? There's so many practical things that we do that really need every possible angle, every possible area of resistance.
Yep, absolutely. And something to think about, and I'm going to bring this up. This question for you. When it comes to something like an overhead press, that's a very common exercise in fitness, done usually very wrong by most people in general. I have heard from many, many, many physicians, do not let them push, do not let them put anything over their head, do not lift any weights over their head. Their hand should not go up because it causes neck strain, it causes low back strain, especially people with stenosis or neck injuries, whiplash, etc. And for those reasons, there are specific reasons, yes. For me, and I'll tell you my philosophy, I'm not a huge fan of an older person, and you and I fall in that category. I hate to say, anybody over the age of about 40, in my opinion, is a little bit, an overhead press directly overhead. There's not much functionality to it directly overhead. However, and for those of you watching on YouTube, I'm going to turn sideways. In front of the body, slightly in front, but overhead is incredibly functional, because that is that overhead, putting your suitcase, which you and I travel. How heavy is your suitcase? It's got to be 25, 30 pounds.
last time it was 35, and putting it overhead bin was like, I hope I don't drop this on somebody's head. It was a little, I felt awkward. I felt very awkward in that moment.
Yeah. So for me, it's all about functionality when it comes to upper body a lot as well. What do they do on a regular basis? What do they need to do? Again, you and I travel. So for me, putting something in the overhead, I can't tell you how many times I've had to help people put things in the overhead. And these aren't, okay, there are some people you take a look at it, you're like, oh, honey, I'll take care of that.
That's never going to work.
You're not going to be able to lift that up. There's no way. It's okay. And there's other people that you think you can't lift that up. They're younger than me. They look like but they don't have the strength necessarily to lift it. So I'm always thinking functionality. That's something you should be able to do with a certain amount of weight.
Yes.
For a lot of people, it's also around the house. If you have to clean something, reach up, put something on a high shelf. These are all things that are functional that you have to do, not necessarily on a regular basis, but regular enough. So I always want to train that. So I will have them do what I call a high incline press of some sort. So I'll take my bench and not make it perfectly 90 degrees, but tip it back to 80, 75, and then have them do dumbbells or whatever resistance I want them to do. But to train that, because that is functionality. And then eventually, if I know they're going to be traveling or going somewhere, I may create something where I'm going to say, okay, pick this up, put it on that high shelf. Here's my sand bell. Take this, put it up there. It's 15 pounds. It's 20 pounds because I have various sizes. Okay, put it all the way up there. And you can see there, oh my gosh. And then take it down, put it back down, lift it back up again. But again, it's functionality.
And one thing I want to bring out there is, again, typically overhead press is done overhead, right? It just typically is. And one of the things that I play with, not just in that exercise, but in many exercises, is really keeping the arms in a range of motion that is more functional. So for example, rather than having the arms straight out to the side, like we do for abduction, right? Have them in what we call scaption, which is the
100%.
angle of the scapula. And the only way to do this is like, make sure you can still see your fingers in your peripheral vision.
Yep.
Unless you're blind there, that'll give you approximately the right, it doesn't have to be fancy, that'll give you approximately the right position. And thinking about the overhead press, not straight overhead, but pushing it up and forward, right? So you're at that angle. And I think about that. Think about my mother-in-law is like 5 feet tall. She's passed now, but she was like 5 feet tall, really short. She hated my kitchen. I'm 5'9", and she's this tiny Jewish mother-in-law. And she was like, I can't reach anything in your kitchen. Your plates are too heavy. Your pots are too heavy. Like she really drove her nuts. She couldn't lift up something and be like, oh my God, and she couldn't lift it. So, again, functionality, right? She didn't have the strength to use my kitchen, and I got heavy stuff, but still. So again, thinking about that in terms of the angle, and to bring this up to the Pilates environment, a couple of things to think about there. A common place we do overhead press is in prone, long box with the hands on the foot bar. Right? And just pushing away from the foot bar, which honestly, I think is a fantastic place to do it. Your torso is relatively stable. You're getting a lot of work through the whole back body to stabilize as you go. And this is the critical thing, you can lower the foot bar so that the arms are not overhead, because if you first start, they kind of are, but lower them down to 1 or 2 rungs down, and then you really are having the arms slightly in front of you, not straight overhead. I also like it because you can do single arm there and other kinds of things. But that's just a little tidbit on the overhead press in the Pilates environment.
Now, something to go along with that I've done, I love that move, is I will have them, instead of their elbows being out to their side, I will have their elbows drop down a little bit. So it's not in the frontal plane. It's not directly out to the side, like you were saying with scaption, bringing the elbows in front of them slightly. So it's almost in between sagittal and frontal. It's much gentler on your shoulder joint. It's the way the shoulder was designed to move freely. Whereas if you think about way out to the side and pressing up, that really doesn't, your shoulder joint doesn't like that nearly as much as just bringing that in slightly. Oh my gosh, I have free range of motion.
Exactly.
So I will do that on that move, especially drop that elbow down a little bit. And they feel so much more comfortable.
Yeah, I'll play with it like they're kind of like they're doing a triceps push-up. Right. So the fingers are up and the elbows are down, and then they push back and forth from there. Again, even at that slight angle. And then I will also have them play with it with the elbows slightly out. So they're a little bit more in a chest press, like a pec stretch. And I'll have them play with both of those because it just gets a little different strength. But I never do it super wide there because it's just, that's a very vulnerable position on the shoulder, and it's not worth it to me. I don't want to cause trouble.
I love that you just said those words, not worth it. I learned this a long, long time ago. If there's and this is what I was taught, if there's greater than a 5% chance of injury with an exercise, don't do it.
Yeah.
For me, 5%, I say like 1%, because there are millions of exercises. Now, when I train my boys, okay, they've got great posture. I mean, amazing posture. I'm very proud of them, but amazing posture. Their scapulas move great. They can do overhead presses, but I keep their elbows slightly in front of their body, and they do it, and they are fine with it. Okay, their shoulders can handle it. Again, with most of my clients, they don't need to do that. So there's a risk, that risk reward. There's not enough reward for that risk because I can train their shoulders in up 10 million ways that I don't have to do that exercise, and I can still get them strong. Unless they're a painter and they're painting overhead, or there's something where it's part of their job that they do regularly. I don't need to train that with them. So again, I look at that risk reward. If there's any risk, find another exercise. I find that
Right.
too many people get
yeah, they get obsessed with, I have to do this, and it just
right.
cause themselves an injury. Absolutely. I see that all the time. Yeah.
Well, I think in Pilates land, especially for the younger instructors, they get stuck on the repertoire and a certain number of exercises, and they have to do all of these exercises with every person. I see that. It's like, no, you don't. Pick and choose. Not every exercise is applicable for every client. You pick and choose. If there's a risk, find something else, because there's tons of stuff you can do.
Which, honestly, we should just end right there, because that's like, it is, both for fitness instructors, I see it less, although they also can get pretty rigid in their, like,
Oh, yes. No
bites, tries,
question.
decks, and flies or whatever, or I do, this is the circuit that I do, and this is the circuit that I always do, or whatever.
Yep.
And that, as a beginner, and I have to say, as a beginner teacher of whatever you're doing, personal training, Pilates, anything in the movement realm, you kind of have to figure out how to teach it. And sometimes that just means teaching everybody the same stuff for a while, until you kind of get used to, this person needs it modified this way. This person could take a little more weight. This person, shouldn't be doing that. Like, it takes time with whatever repertoire you're doing to figure out what works and what doesn't, and then to get more subtle about it and more sensitive about it for your clients. So there is that. But that being said, once you're past that initial just learning how to teach the darn moves phase, which can take a while, then really then it's paying attention. And we've talked about this in the last several episodes. Then it's paying attention. What's working, what's not working, listening to client feedback. Does that hurt? Do they have an injury? Is something getting more sore as you're working with them? All those things, right? Or if they've got an injury somewhere and you're like, oh, okay, I want to stay away from that. Stay away from it. Don't work the shoulders this week. Don't work whatever you need to work, right? So thinking about that for sure.
When in doubt, leave it out. I mean, really,
exactly.
That's what it comes down to. And truthfully, if a client tells you something doesn't feel good, my rule is this: 3 repetitions, because we deal with a lot of people with pain. So the first repetition may be waking something up in the muscle, or the joint may say, hey, I don't know about this. Second rep, you're oiling the joint. Okay. Third rep, oh, no problem, no pain. Okay, we're good to go. If it increases between number 2 and 3, stop. Find something else. Or just
Step
say,
away.
Maybe it's not. Maybe I had a client today. It wasn't a good day for his knee. He walked in, he said, I don't know what I did to it. It's cranky. It's aggravated. And it has been for a little bit. And it was really talking to him today. So you know what? We worked on the hip. Then we did upper body, core, and everything else but the knee. It's like, avoid it. It'll heal.
You've only got an hour.
Yeah, exactly. I got plenty to do.
You got plenty to do. Fill it up with something else. Focus on another body part for the day. It's never a problem. So getting a little back to the upper body. One other piece that I wanted to add here, and we kind of started right out with like the training component, but 2 pieces that we haven't spoken to a lot. One is the rotator cuff, just getting sort of glenohumeral congruency and endurance, which is a really key part of upper body training. And the other one is just scapula mobility and kind of how that works. And I think, you do some wonderful rotator cuff stuff. As in the workshop we're doing, I was really pleased and thrilled with what you're bringing out. But the rotator cuff is a fundamental source of stability in the arm. And if it's not working for whatever reason, or it's really weak, then that humerus is kind of sliding around a bit in the socket. So I have to say, one of the things that I'll often play with too is just getting the rotator cuff to work, making sure that the humerus is working in the socket and that is kind of organized. And if that's organized, then I can load it. If that's really sloppy in the joint, and it isn't always, but every now and then it is. If it's really sloppy in the joint or really weak, then if I load it, I'm just going to put stress. Because like the foundation isn't built. I just think of the rotator cuff as being one of the foundations of the shoulder.
100%. That's why W's and T's are things that I give almost immediately. The W position. Now, a lot of people want to go into more of a goal post where their arms are almost out at 90 degrees from their shoulders and their elbows are bent to 90 degrees. I say bring those elbows and tuck them into your ribs. So your
So really,
hands will
really
actually
W.
be, oh yeah, your hands will be right by your
Yeah,
shoulders.
right. Mm-hmm.
Because now as you lift up and you squeeze, you're going to get better scapular retraction, but also that rotator cuff is really in a little tighter position. And if they can't do that, that tells me right there, okay, we need to spend some time building some strength, building some mobility, because maybe the subscapularis is a little too tight and they can't even lift that arm off the ground. Maybe, or someone who has unbelievable range of motion in that position is, ooh, okay, you got a little bit of joint instability. We need to start focusing on what is proper range of motion instead of one of these huge ranges of motion. And then we got to sort of bring that down a little bit and tell the joint, here's where we can play. Here's where we can play safely. Let's stay here.
Yeah,
So
let's
it
find
really,
our limits.
exactly. But no, you're absolutely right. When building a foundation, we've said this, in many past podcasts, whenever we're starting with a new client, you're building a foundation first. If you just throw exercises at them, you're building a house on sand. You're not going to build any good foundation or functional strength. So we need to build that foundation. And the rotator cuff is the foundation, in my opinion. Scapular stability. So I want to make sure that they can feel where it is in place, how to get to that neutral. Can they hold it?
Mm-hmm.
Can they maintain
Yeah.
some endurance? And do they have good rotator cuff integrity and endurance? I think you saw in the course, I was teaching 15, 20, 25, 30 reps. I
Yeah,
want lots of
exactly.
repetitions.
I don't care about resistance. I care about reps. I want lots of
Bingo.
reps. And again, I don't care if you have no resistance on it at all. I
Right.
want that rotator cuff to be working, because it has to work absolutely all the time, anytime your arm is moving.
Yep.
It is in
Exactly.
action, because it is that fundamental little adjuster that puts the humerus in the right position for the big muscles to do their job. And if that's not working, and if it can't keep doing it all the time, then it runs into trouble.
Yeah. And that's what a lot of people are missing. So if they join a gym, they start lifting weights without really focusing on the foundation. A lot of times the bigger muscles on the outside start looking a little better. They start gaining a little bit of strength, but there's going to come a tipping point. Always. I see this happen all the time, especially as we get a little older, because our bodies aren't like they used to be. They don't heal as quickly as they did when they were 18. But there's a tipping point, and that's when we see rotator cuff injuries. We see tendonitis. We see bursitis. We see things that shouldn't be, because the joint really isn't working properly. So it's our job to get it that way.
Exactly. A good friend of mine was a weightlifter, a bodybuilder, and went out to do some windsurfing. And like I knew what his program was, and I would give him grief about it, but whatever, because I knew he wasn't really doing any rotator cuff stuff. He wasn't really doing any kind of fundamental work. He would do a lot of like very superficial chest and presses and that kind of thing. And he went out to windsurf one day and dislocated his shoulder.
Yeah.
Not a very fun thing, because you're like sitting in the water with a windsurfer and you've got a dislocated shoulder.
Oh.
And it kind of like, she sort of popped it back into place. It kind of went back in. But it was interesting because, I'd been telling him for years, like, you've got to do some rotator cuff. You've got to get some strength, because I would test his rotator cuff, and like, given how strong everything else was, it was not strong enough. Yeah. Given the weights that he could press and stuff. And it was just a classic. And he came back from that and he's like, okay, I've got to do my rotator cuff now. But that's what it took. Like he literally didn't have the inherent stability of the joint. Like the superficial was great. The inside wasn't working. So we did a lot of rotator cuff stuff, and it helped everything. Honestly, it really made him a much better weightlifter and much better person, and much less pain in all those areas.
See, what you just described is what I do with a lot of clients. It's about eating your vegetables before you have your dessert.
Right.
You know what? I tell people, I say, you want especially for my women who want better triceps. It's one of those things that after a certain
Yes,
point, they're
I
like,
know.
I need the tricep. We need to do triceps. And I say,
I've got a
cool,
wedding coming up, right?
bingo.
Yes. I don't want to have bingo arms. Yes, all that.
Exactly. Exactly. So I'll say, no problem. We'll get to that as long as we do all this stuff first. So
Exactly.
I've got these. When we're done with those, we can get to that. But if you take too long with these, we're never going to get to that. It makes them focus.
So it motivates them to like they know where they want to go and they know they can't get there without doing these first. I love it.
Exactly. Exactly. But it's getting them to eat their vegetables first. And when they do, they get stronger. I got a
Yes,
great
exactly.
example. I had a guy who was a power lifter and he had
Hmm.
been stuck at a weight for a long time and just couldn't. And there does come a point with most power lifters where they hit their max and for whatever reason, they just don't go any further. But he really should have been able to go farther on his bench press. And I watched his form and I said, your shoulders are weak. Well, no, I'm not. I said, no, but they're weak inside. I said, inherently weak.
Exactly.
I said,
Exactly.
and I literally took him down to the bar only, pissed him off.
Yeah.
And we did a
Yeah.
lot of rotator cuff and we worked on motion. We worked on breaking it all the way back down. He
Yeah.
exceeded his old goals within a year. And it took a long
Yeah.
time to retrain.
Yes.
But in a
Yeah.
year, he far exceeded where his maximum was because we got him stronger from the inside out. We worked
Exactly.
on the fundamentals and we worked on the biomechanics of the joint to get him stronger. And then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, he said, I can't believe this worked because he was so mad at me. And I said, either you trust me or you don't.
Right.
Fine.
Your choice.
And then he's I can't believe I'm doing this. And that this was my max weight. And it actually feels as though I can do more. I said, because you can. The muscle
Yeah.
didn't go so
Exactly.
strong. It's just we had to
That's
tweak how you're doing it.
that's great. I love that. I love that story because that is, I mean, that's the best kind of thing that we do. Right? Like when
Mhm.
we are at our best as trainers, we take somebody and we improve their mechanics and we improve their movement foundation so they can add load to it, add resistance to it, add running or whatever they're going to do to it and succeed.
Yep.
Right? Without pain, without discomfort, and get better at what they do. Like that's what we do ideally. That's our best role.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. So basically that's how I focus on upper body strengthening. Endurance
Yep.
first, posterior shoulder girdle, strength and endurance. Endurance first, but then strength, then anterior shoulder girdle. I'll throw in biceps, triceps, shoulders, all of that kind of stuff because that's what's expected. I hate to say, but in a gym environment, it's expected. But I like to do it in 3 dimensions. I like to do it in all angles, all ranges of motion to give the person the most functional, set of shoulders and upper body possible. You know, that's usually how I work it.
Thanks, Brent. I think that was helpful to me just to hear a philosophy and a way of progressing things and what their priorities were. That was super helpful.
Awesome.
So yeah, thank you. Love it. I
And I
love
loved
learning. It's
hearing,
the best
I
part.
also loved the breakdown of taking those exercises and how you use them in Pilates land, because that helps me as well. Because I hate to say this, but when I'm doing those exercises, it's like, oh yeah, that does work it for this. Oh, cool. I know that inherently, but to hear it was sort of like, oh yeah, I haven't done that one in a while. I need to try that. Especially the chair work. It's sort of like, yeah, I got to remember that stuff is so good. And I tend to forget.
Yeah. Chair's really good for that endurance and that posture piece. And it's just, yeah. And even the mobility piece, because you get a lot of
Mhm.
really good thoracic mobility there. All those things. All right.
Very
Well,
good.
good. I think we've covered the topic.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. And thank you guys very much for listening and tuning in. We really appreciate it. Do us a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. We really appreciate it. You can reach us at movingcombos@gmail.com, Instagram, Moving Combos. And for Nora St. John, I'm Brian Ritchie. We'll see y'all next week.
Bye, guys.